Deep down, we all know someone who's been trapped in a cycle of emotional abuse, forced to justify and endure the pain inflicted upon them, often by a person they deeply care for. At the heart of this pattern lies a profound, and often unconscious, fear of vulnerability, the desperate need to avoid emotional exposure that can be as crippling as it is pervasive. I've seen it play out in the lives of friends and family members who have slowly been consumed by the very people they trusted, and I've heard it echoed in my own darkest moments, the haunting feeling of needing control to feel safe. In this video, we're going to explore the unseen force driving these dynamics and shed light on the taboo conversations we rarely have out loud, revealing a haunting pattern that holds the key to understanding the descent into emotional tyranny. In abusive relationships, the mask of love is often a carefully crafted veil to conceal the darker forces at play, where an individual's deep-seated fear of vulnerability is exploited to trigger a descent into emotional tyranny, as they unknowingly surrender control to the very person who feeds their insecurities. When we crave validation from someone who lacks empathy, we inadvertently create a dynamic where their approval becomes our sole source of self-worth, making us susceptible to manipulation and abuse. Behind the facade of attraction often lies a desperate attempt to fill the void of our own unmet emotional needs, and in their eyes, we see a reflection of the love and acceptance we've always longed for, never realizing that this love is a thin veil for the controlling nature that lies beneath. Through our fear of abandonment and rejection, we create an environment where emotional blackmail becomes the primary means of communication, and our partner's actions become a perpetual balancing act, always walking the fine line between our needs and their own self-interests. The ego, fueled by a relentless pursuit of validation and acceptance, can lead us down a path of self-deception, where we justify and rationalize our partner's toxic behavior, convinced that we're the ones who are being flawed, and our abuser is the only one who truly understands us. At its core, the attraction to an abusive partner is often a cry for help, a desperate attempt to fill the void left by our own emotional shortcomings, and yet, in that cry for help, we inadvertently invite more harm, perpetuating a cycle of emotional tyranny that will ultimately leave us broken and battered, searching for a love that was never genuine to begin with. We're often led to believe that abusive relationships are about power and control, but that's a surface-level assessment. What drives the desire for control is a deeper fear, the fear of being vulnerable, exposed, and hurt. Behind the mask of assertiveness and dominance, many abusers are secretly desperate for validation and approval. They can only find this through the submission and compliance of their partner. This need for validation fuels their toxic behavior, and it's the one driving force behind every emotionally abusive relationship. When we're attracted to someone, our initial excitement and passion aren't based on their actual character, but on their perception of us and how we perceive them responding to us. It's a twisted game of validation and mutual dependency, which lays the groundwork for eventual emotional tyranny. Abusers have an exceptional talent for hiding their insecurities, often beneath an impenetrable armor of confidence and self-assurance. However, their insecurities are merely disguised as self-doubt, anxiety, and deep-seated fear, making them incredibly manipulative and cunning. What many of us don't recognize is how we unconsciously attract and choose partners who are in direct conflict with our own emotional and psychological needs. This choice might be driven by our unresolved past traumas, our deep-seated needs for security, or the familiar patterns of our own emotional dynamics. You see, the root of all abusive relationships lies not in a desire for power or control, but in a desperate need for validation and security fueled by deep-seated insecurities. Abusers prey on the vulnerable, and the driving force behind their actions is often a twisted blend of fear and ego that masquerades as charm and charisma. When we're in a position of perceived superiority, our ego takes over, and we often mistake this inflated sense of self for genuine confidence. While in reality, it's just a fragile shield protecting us from the very vulnerability we're so desperately trying to avoid. Abusers use manipulation as a means to an end, exploiting our intrinsic need for love and connection, often by presenting themselves as the sole source of validation we so desperately crave. By preying on our insecurities and playing on our deepest fears, they are able to exert control through fear and emotional intimidation, essentially turning us into prisoners of our own emotions. At the heart of every abusive relationship is a toxic dance of attraction and repulsion, where the abuser is simultaneously drawn to our vulnerability while trying to break and exploit it, creating a cycle of hurt and self-deception that's incredibly hard to escape. When we're in an abusive relationship, it's not that our partner is manipulative, it's that they are masters at exploiting our deepest insecurities to feed their own ego. The moment we surrender to the vulnerability, we're already halfway to losing ourselves. Their job is to make us feel dependent, trapped, and desperate for their validation, because once we're there, they own us. Abusers aren't interested in being attracted to our qualities, they are interested in being the one who's most attractive to us, and as long as they can be the prize, they'll use every trick in the book to keep us hooked. The irony is that while we're losing ourselves to their control, we're also desperate to prove to them that we're worthy, that we're loved, and that we're needed, a cycle of self-deception that's impossible to escape without facing our own deepest fears. As we delve into the intricacies of codependent relationships, it's essential to acknowledge that our vulnerability is met with a deep-seated fear of rejection, which often stems from our childhood experiences and perceived inadequacies. We're drawn to relationships that promise security, validation, and a sense of control. But what we often find ourselves sacrificing is our very sense of self, our agency, and our emotional intelligence. It's fascinating how our desire for love and acceptance can be hijacked by our ego's need for validation, causing us to settle for toxic connections that systematically erode our confidence and autonomy. At its core, codependency is about trying to fill an existential void within ourselves, often through the approval and validation of another person. However, this attempt at external validation only reinforces our deep-seated insecurity and need for control. We're so captivated by the idea of being the one who can save or fix another person that we overlook the red flags of unhealthy patterns and the manipulation that often accompany them, effectively sacrificing our own emotional well-being for the sake of maintaining a sense of connection and belonging. Unbeknownst to many, the cycle of codependency is driven by a profound fear of being alone, coupled with an insatiable need for self-deception, which enables us to justify and rationalize the abusive dynamics that slowly consume our lives. As we reflect on the profound pattern that holds us captive in abusive relationships, I urge you to recognize and rewire your fear of vulnerability, for it's in embracing openness that we reclaim our power and dignity. By witnessing and learning from this crucial insight, we can shatter cycles of control and rise into the light of empowered intimacy. Thank you for watching. Please consider sharing your observations in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more courageous explorations into the human psyche.